Hey guys, it's Atheist for the Cause here with another video, and sorry if this one sucks, but I recorded it and forgot to hit the record button, so here we go again. By the way, keep an eye open for, I've got a political article that I want to go over, and that'll probably be like tonight or tomorrow. And then I've got a big special report I'm gonna call the series where I analyze certain things. A lot of it's gonna be election based. Like this next special report's gonna be basically the impact illegal aliens, undocumented people, however you want to word it, how they impact the election, specifically in regards to electoral votes. And because their illegals actually greatly impact our elections, in terms of how many electoral votes each candidate gets. And I don't think people really realize that. And I'm gonna go through it pretty in depth. So I'm excited to do that. So keep your eyes open. That'll probably come tomorrow, but if I get ambitious, I might do it tonight. But anyways, to get into what I'm talking about today, it's an opinion piece about Sally Yates and her testimony. So basically, I'll put the full testimony in the description so you can check it out. Highly recommend it. It's only about three and a half hours. It's not too bad. But everything she said sounded completely partisan to me. Now here's a person to give some of her background who she has ties to the Obama administration. That's where allegiance is. She doesn't get along with the Trump administration. They were going to get rid of her. She was just there for the transition from Obama to Trump. She was the acting attorney general. And she's the one who refused to implement the travel ban that was actually, if you listen to the testimony, it was deemed legal, and she overrode the opinion of the court based on her own political agenda, basically. So that's her background, and now we're supposed to believe that Trump is somehow colluding with the Russians potentially because he didn't listen to her when she went to the White House Council to talk about some discussions that Flynn had allegedly had with Russia, and her urgency to go to the White House on this was based on the fact that Pence said something to the American public that it was information given to him by Flynn that was inaccurate, and she's trying to make it out to seem like she's doing Pence a favor, and she's doing the administration a favor by telling by going to them about this. But here's the thing. She can go and give her opinion all she wants about whether Trump should have hired Flynn or not. But in the end, there was no investigation at the time. There was nothing, no hard evidence against Flynn at the time that would lead to his criminal prosecution. Now, apparently, when asked during the testimony during her conversation with the White House counsel, if it came up that, there could be criminal prosecution of Flynn, and she said, yeah, it came up. Well, okay, it came up, but that doesn't tell us anything. That could be like the counsel saying, did prosecution come, or could this lead to prosecution of Flynn or something vague? And she could say potentially, and that's a conversation all of a sudden. You know what I mean? So there's nothing substantial, no substance, and if you listen to it, it'll become quite clear that everything's based on her opinion. Just like the travel ban. Um, it's all based on opinion, and anytime she's asked a direct question about it, it's always all these caveat words, like potentially there, or she can't talk about it because it's sensitive or classified. So, I mean, and the way, it's quite disturbing to me how out of touch these people are. The way James Clapper talks, he's from the intelligence community, or used to be. He's a citizen now. The way he talks about how this open setting is good for informing the public about what Russia does. Like, we don't know that Russia tries to influence American elections. Why wouldn't they? The Europe does the same thing. Saudi Arabia does the same thing. We're not having all these discussions about European countries, Saudi Arabia, or all these other pro-Clinton countries that tried to influence the elections to help Clinton win, because through partisanship, that doesn't match the narrative. And even in the testimony, he had to concede that the Russians have been doing this since at least the 60s and probably earlier. They've been trying to influence elections. If you actually look at his body language, what Clapper is saying, I think he says his body language says as much as the lack of substance that Yates has. He looks like he doesn't want to be there, like he knows nothing is going to come of this. Even, to say that this is good for informing the public, that is indirectly saying this isn't good for, leading to a conclusion on Trump or Flynn. So, this is all political. It's all to set a narrative. It's to set up a future potential impeachment of Trump. Oh my God, Trump didn't listen to Sally Yates about Flynn, so he must be in on the collusion with Russia. And even when Sally Yates is talking about Flynn, talking to the Russians, she never goes as far to say that he's colluding. It's, there's potential that he could be blackmailed because basically they have some dirt on him. I mean, I'm sure the Russians have dirt on a lot of people. That doesn't necessarily mean that someone can't be in office or hold some sort of position, But and from what I remember, Trump didn't even fire Flynn. They're talking about the 18 days or whatever after this conversation before Flynn was no longer working. Well, Flynn resigned probably because it would be easier on him and the administration with this investigation coming. But I think in the end, we're going to have to keep in mind, see what the conclusion of this all is. And if Flynn goes to prison or Trump gets impeached, and not only impeached, but found guilty and kicked out of office of collusion, okay, well, if it goes through the court process and all of that, then maybe they had a point, and I'll admit I was wrong. But unless Flynn goes in prison or Trump is kicked out of office, this is going to look like a political witch hunt. And as someone who came from the Democratic Party, I've never voted Republican in my life before Trump ran. And Trump being, the candidate is one of the reasons, because I actually like him. I see him as more of a centrist than a true conservative, and I don't see him as a libertarian at all. Um, Trump was palatable to me. Um, so, you know, guys like Cruz and the Republican establishment in the past have not been very palatable to me, especially being an atheist, how religious they are. But I did vote Obama twice, I still consider myself, I've been using the term less and less, but left leaning. I'm a left leaning centrist. So, um, it, you know, the reason I'm bringing all this up is because I moved from left to the middle to the center, and it's just gonna push more people like me. I know there's people like the Hard Bastard and people like Sargano Vakad, who's probably a little further left to me, who, you know, some of those guys don't like Trump necessarily, but they would rather have Trump than Hillary. And this whole political witch hunt is only pushing us further away from the Democratic Party. And you have guys like Sam Harris, who's an outspoken atheist, huge following, Hillary Clinton supporter, kind of by default, because he didn't like Trump at all. And, falls on the left. You now have him talking about potentially starting a new center-left party. And, with the way the progressives are taking over the party, and, the witch hunt of and I'm not saying all of this is what Sam Harris's logic is, but I know Sam Harris has a big problem with the way that the progressives are anti-free speech and have kind of taken over the Democratic Party on that. And the way, for me, these political witch hunts against Trump and others on the right, frankly, the intolerance that's just growing on the left, that's quite disgusting. That's what my political article review is going to be about. Is it's actually talking about how the left is as intolerant and more intolerant than they think than the right. So I actually think we're getting to, I guess it's hard to really quantify, but I think we're getting to a point where the left is getting to be worse than the right, because at least on the right, their intolerance is based around religion. But with the left, it's based around values. And so they pervert those values, and they, deem anybody a Nazi. And once you're a Nazi, just because you're white, you're a Nazi, randomly walking on the street, and they'll start attacking you. With the anti-fascists, the Antifa, then the Antifa gets support from a lot of the mainstream, at least progressives, and actually most Democrats. It's like we're at a point where this isn't fringe. The actions of Antifa are fringe, but their support is not fringe. It's common for people to say that they're intolerant of the intolerant, but they don't realize that there's a judgment on who the intolerant is, and they see themselves as the decider. And of course you have to trust your own judgment, but the whole point of being tolerant of others is to understand that you can be wrong on things, and that we all need to discuss in the open setting, and that will lead to the advancement of society. So I guess my whole, that was a little bit of a rant, but my whole point here is what Sally Yates is doing, what the Democrats are doing. it's only going further into the rabbit hole of why people like me left the Democratic Party, why people like me voted for Trump, why we helped elect Trump, why the Democratic Party you know, is extremely unpopular right now. Coming off of electing Obama twice, it should be extremely popular. It's not, because they went so far extreme. So, anyways, and mark my words, the Republicans are going to be the first party to elect a woman. I'm saying that now. So, um, anyways, that's all I've got. I really hope you guys watch the actual elections, or the actual Sally Yates hearing or testimony. Um, and I think you'll get a lot more out of it. And you'll really see the partisanship for yourself. And you'll be convinced that she's completely partisan. So have a good one, guys.